In this lesson, we're going to be looking at rational equations. Rational equations are an equation that has variables in the numerator or denominators of a fraction. To solve rational equations, you're going to use a similar process as you would for fractional equations that have fractional coefficients. We're going to first factor any of the denominators, and then we're going to determine what the lowest common denominator is. Lowest common denominator is the lowest common multiple of the factors in the denominators. All right. So first example, we've got all of our denominators are already factored. We can't factor them any further. So we're going to first determine what the denominator cannot be. The denominator can never equal 0 because you cannot divide something by nothing. So if we set each of those denominators equal to 0, we determine that v cannot equal 0. And then the lowest common denominator for the coefficients is 4. And then for the variables, all the variables have a power of 1, so the lowest common denominator is going to be 4v. So we're going to multiply all of the terms in the equation by 4v. When we multiply the first term by 4v, 2v divides into 4v 2 times. So we're left with 2 times v plus 1. And then the 4v's in the second term cancel, leaving us with just 5. And then the last term on the right side of the equation, 2v divides into 4v 2 times, just like the first term. So we're left with 2 times the numerator, which is 1. Now we simplify by distributing the 2 into both terms of the parentheses. That's going to give us 2v plus 2. And then plus 5 equals 2 times 1 is 2. Combine the like terms. 2 plus 5 is 7. And then when we subtract 7 from both sides, 2 minus 7 is negative 5. Divide both sides by 2. V equals negative 5 over 2. Let's go back to that last problem. So you always want to make sure that your solution does not equal what you determined your variable cannot equal initially. And negative 5 over 2 is not equal to 0, so we're good to go. Next example. We do have 2 denominators that can be factored. So first thing we want to do is factor those denominators. Once we factor the denominators, we want to set all the factors equal to 0 to determine what x cannot equal. When I set x equal to 0, that tells me that x cannot equal 0. And when I set the x minus 2 equal to 0, that will let me know that x cannot equal 2. Now I determine what the lowest common denominator is. We've got an x, and we've got x minus 2, so our LCD is going to be x times x minus 2. So we're going to multiply all the terms by the LCD, and then cancel whatever we can cancel. For the first term, the x's and the x minus 2's will cancel, leaving us with 1. In the second term, the x's will cancel, and that'll leave us with x minus 2 times 3. And in the last term, the x's and the x minus 2's will cancel, leaving us with just 2. Distribute the 3. Combine the like terms. And once we combine the like terms, we'll get negative 8. And then we'll add 8 to 8 both sides. We get 9 equals 3x, so x is going to equal 3. That 3 does not equal 0 or 2, so that's a valid solution.
Next example, same process.
factor the denominators. When we do, we determine what n cannot equal by setting each of the factors equal to 0. When we set n equal to 0, we get n cannot equal 0. And then when we set the 2n equal to 0, we get the same thing, n cannot equal 0. When we set n minus 2 equal to 0, n minus 1 equal to 0, we determine that n cannot equal 1. And then we determine what the LCD is. So the lowest common multiple for the coefficients for the numbers is 2. And then we have a factor of n. And then we have a factor of n minus 1. So the LCD is going to be 2n times n minus 1. Multiply that by all three terms in the equation. Cancel what you can cancel. The 2n's in the first term. The 2's will cancel in the first term. And the n minus 1's, leaving us with n times n. And then in the second term, the n's will cancel, leaving us with 2 times n minus 1 times 7n plus 7. And in the last term on the right side of the equation, the 2n's will cancel and the n minus 1's will cancel, leaving us with just 1. Multiply, simplify both of those terms. N times n is n squared. When I multiply 2 times n minus 1, I get 2n minus 2. Multiply those two, and we get 14n squared minus 14. Distribute the negative to the parentheses. And then we will then combine the like terms. N squared minus 14n is negative 13n squared. I subtracted 14 from both sides to get negative 13 on the right side of the equation. Divide both sides by negative 13. We get n squared equals positive 1. Take the square root of both sides. That tells us that n is equal to plus and minus the square root of 1. Square root of 1 is just 1. So our solutions would be positive and negative 1. However, initially, we determined that x cannot equal 0 or 1. So the solution 1 would be an extraneous solution. We cannot use that one because it would make our denominator 0. So our only solution is negative 1.